Intertalk Radio, you're in to all things music.
When I started working more and more with entertainment professionals, this issue of having to build reserves, the next job, you never know when it's coming.
Right.
There's a principle called pay yourself first. We get paid and then we go out and we pay all these other people. We pay the landlord, we pay the grocery man, we pay the car man, we pay all these other people, but we don't pay ourselves. What does that mean, paying yourself first? It means saving, taking the first 10% of whatever you earn. So if you get $1,000, you take $100 and you set it aside for yourself.
Welcome to Making It with Terry Woolman, the show that explores the secrets, successes, and strategies for making it in the music biz. And now, here's your host, Terry Woolman.
Welcome to the show, and thank you for tuning in. I want to let you know how much I appreciate you joining us on our show. If you missed last week's interview, you can hear it and all of our episodes at entertalkradio.com/makingit, or download our app and take us with you. So often I get asked questions about the creative process. So I created this show to focus on what it takes to have a lasting career in the ever-changing landscape of the music business. You're really in for a treat, as I've invited my friends, some of the best and brightest in music, to share their stories on how they have influenced the music that has shaped our lives. I guarantee you're going to love it. Let's get started. My guest today is wealth manager Darius Gagne. Darius Gagne is the chief investment officer at Abacus Wealth Partners, overseeing $2 billion in assets. He is also financial advisor specializing in financial estate and investment planning for entertainment professionals, executives, and entrepreneurs. Darius is a physicist by training, earning his PhD at UCLA. This is going to be a really interesting hour. Please welcome my guest today, Darius Gagne. Welcome, Darius.
Thanks, Terry. It's great to be speaking to you.
You're very welcome. Thanks for carving out an hour of your busy day to join us. And I wanted to start off by saying music is a business, and an important element of business is preparing for the future. That's one of the reasons I've been wanting to bring you onto the show for quite a while, to really just talk about the financial aspect of being in business for yourself or living the life of an artist. And I know some of the same rules apply to people that don't live artistic lives. And then there's some, perhaps some special perspectives that we will get into today. But I also want to just talk about you personally and what led you to becoming a financial advisor. So why don't you start by telling a little bit about yourself and your childhood and how you got to today's conversation?
Okay. Well, let's see. I was raised by a single mother. I think I've mentioned that to you, or you read it once in my bio. And I think that shaped me quite a bit, Terry, over the years. My mom is a tremendously independent person, and that's something that I think I've carried with me as a trait. I think I've turned out to be just a very independent person, I at some point, kind of finishing high school, I just got really kind of philosophical. What's the meaning of life, really? Why are we here, and what's this all about? And it led me down a path of studying physics, because it seemed like kind of a path to some answers of just kind of understanding. I was really interested in kind of big picture issues, like how the universe was formed and where it comes from and things like that. And so kind of what people call metaphysics. And so it led me down the path of studying physics. And I did that at UCLA. And I I tell you, I was in those years, I was not ready to seriously think about career. And if there was another degree beyond a PhD, I probably would have just stayed for that too. I was just not ready to think about the career side of things. I just was really enjoying this kind of thirst for knowledge and studying physics. And so, well, as it turns out, I ran out of degrees. PhD was the last one they offered at UCLA. And so I got my PhD in physics, and I had to finally face up to the question of what do I want to do? And I actually, when I looked around, kind of looked at the different paths physicists were taking, I discovered back then in the mid-90s that a handful of physicists and mathematicians had wandered into Wall Street and started applying those quantitative skills toward other quantitative problems that are not totally traditional for physicists and mathematicians, and namely finance in Wall Street. So that sounded really exciting to me. A chance to learn another side of the world, another side of the economy, another aspect of people, and kind of a way to just get an all new education, continue that path of kind of that quest for learning. And so I, with some kind of effort, I managed to break into the financial industry and start my career out in New York. I was raised in LA, and from LA, my wife and I, she's from LA too. And the only time we've ever been out of LA was when we started our careers in New York. And we spent about 5 years out there, and eventually returned with the birth of our first son, and wanted to be closer to the family again. And we've been in LA ever since, and been in finance ever since. I eventually started, I kind of transitioned away from the kind of what's that sort of high finance path that a lot of physicists go toward, and eventually started my own wealth management firm in 2005. And that was called Quantum Wealth Management, in honor of my background in quantum physics. And that went quite well. And I merged that business with my current company, Abacus, in 2012. And I've been with Abacus ever since as the chief investment officer and a financial advisor to a number of clients.
You know, there's a little more to your story when you said you just sort of fell into Wall Street. I was reading in your bio, and I'm going to quote, there I was and I'm saying this because your story is similar to so many artist stories, you know, that there's a randomness to how this happened. And I know that you said that you really never had a plan, you know, you were just living day by day. But here's what I read. There I was, a hippie graduate student with long hair and no networking experience, with only one name of a contact in New York, but no shortage of determination. I lined up a week-long series of interviews with the top Wall Street firms in Manhattan. And on the last day of the week, I will never forget, UBS made me an offer at the end of the interview to be a quantitative analyst. And that started your career and continued your learning. And it made me smile to read that, because that's like my story and so many other stories of people I've interviewed on this show, regardless of, you know, what their actual career is. Perhaps maybe that's the artistic side of you as well, or maybe that's just the nature of life, that there really is no plan. And if you think there is one, it's an illusion.
Yeah, it's really cool that you highlighted that, Terry, because that does, you're right. That does remind me, that part of my life, that chapter of my life does remind me of a lot of the kind of stories I hear from my entertainment clients. You know, just sort of that spontaneity. And, you know, I find one strength I find with a lot of entertainment professionals that I work with are just, whether they know it or not, they have great networking skills. And that's a really important professional skill. And that's something you have to tap into from time to time. And that's exactly what I had done at that phase. And I've had to do that a few times in my career. But there are these occasions where we have to do it on steroids to really kind of make a quantum leap or a shift, quantum shift in from one place to another or one direction to another in our careers or our lives. And you're right, that is exactly what was going on back then.
But it seemed your mom set you on a really good course, because you did not mention this, but I read this, that besides being a single mother, she worked 2 jobs with no college education, but she is also the one who taught you the value of hard work and self-reliance. So she set your course for having a good life, good, happy, productive life to be proud of.
That's exactly right. She really did.
So we can get back at any point of this conversation to talk about other personal things about you that tie into, how you make your choices in your own career and how you help guide other people. But I thought it important for people to know why they should care, about the information that you're going to be sharing. And why don't we jump in, to talk about the unique financial challenges that are faced by musicians and entertainment professionals, and how you address them and how you recommend people address them, and also how to pick a financial advisor. And, and it might seem a little self-serving for me to be asking you and you to be talking about it, but I don't see it as self-serving in any way. I think, this whole show and this conversation is based about sharing information and enlightening and illuminating people. And I know you've dedicated your life to giving guidance to people. So let's start with the unique financial challenges of all the knucklehead and non-knucklehead artists that you represent.
Sounds good. The entertainment industry, I think for a long time there was a belief that it was sort of recession-proof, and I think that started to become shaken for the music side of the industry. What was it, around kind of late 90s, early 2000s, with kind of Napster and all the digital music, and then just how far that went. And then for the rest of the industry, producers, actors, writers, directors in particular, it really started getting the belief that the industry was recession-proof was really shaken in 2008 with the financial crisis. And we saw media companies responding just like all other companies in the economy, namely, they had to fire people. And so that was kind of a wake-up call and really kind of just just shook people up a bit. And let's see, when I think about entertainment professionals, Terry, whether they are, like I said, either musicians or producers, actors, writers, directors, I would say there's 3 main things that really distinguishes them from other professions. And number 1, there's always uncertainty about when the next job will come. Number 2, there's a lot of variability in the income from job to job.
So true.
And number 3, there's a limited lifespan over which you're going to earn that income. That's some of entertainment professionals can produce for kind of full life. Others have a much more limited lifespan depending on, what they do exactly. And athletes are oftentimes can include in the entertainment category, and they particularly have that problem of a shorter lifespan. So those are the 3 main things or main factors that I think really distinguish entertainment professionals from other industries and really present a need for kind of their own kind of planning techniques and unique solutions.
Do you also find that in addition to that, there's a lot of self-employed people don't have a large Social Security or retirement plan that was built into a regular, quote unquote, normal job that other people, would have been building their whole lives.
Yeah, you do. With certain entertainment professionals, musicians in particular, that unfortunately is the case. Now with not so much producers, but actors, writers, directors, they have the big guilds, SAG, WGA, and DGA, and those can have terrific pensions. They can have great health plans, and so all that's great, but also requires just another level of planning. You don't want to. You want to maximize those benefits, and you want to incorporate them into your planning. So it just kind of. I'll mention perhaps when we talk about picking a financial planner for entertainment professionals in particular, you ideally want to work with somebody who understands those benefits, those guild benefits. But yeah, you're right. The lack of traditional retirement plans that a lot of industry employers and a lot of industries offer, that's a big issue for musicians. On the other hand, it is a similar issue that a lot of self-employed people have to deal with in all types of industries, not just entertainment. So that at that level, it's kind of a universal issue for self-employed people. How to create.
And what do you say to Darius? What do you say to all the people that are listening right now that are either in their mind saying, "I'm too late. I should have bought a house when I was younger, started putting away, but I'm in the later part of my career and maybe I blew it. So this conversation isn't really relative to me," or the people that are just starting out that are literally month to month, rent check to rent check, and thinking, I don't have $50 a month that I can put away, in a savings account. So why should I care, or how does this relate to me? So can you dispel the just, I think the not very accurate perception of that?
Yeah, no, I really like the way you frame that. Yeah. One thing you said there, I think it was, how could I buy a house now? I guess you started by saying it's too late. Maybe it's too late
I never
now.
Was able to do that, and now that's never going to happen. Or
you know what that is? And to a large extent, that reminds me of it's this kind of rear view mirror fallacy. People are. My clients do this quite a bit, and not just my entertainment clients. It's a common human kind of issue that gets in our way of making good decisions, good financial decisions in particular. We tend to look backward instead of forward. But in particular, we tend to, how you got to where you are now makes no difference in terms of what you should do going forward. I often tell.
Can you say that one again? I love that you just said that.
Yeah.
How you got to where you are now.
How you got to where you are now makes absolutely no difference in terms of what you should do going forward. So, for example, I often tell my clients, I often feel like I want to tell my clients who have this issue, just take an amnesia pill. And take a pill that makes you forget how you got here, because how you got here should not have any bearing on the decisions you make going forward. And so, the idea that, I wasted all those years in the past. What's the point now? Well, forget about the years in the past. Mm-hmm. It's never too late to make great decisions and to make right decisions, or to make the best decision you can. Mm-hmm. And with all the available information to make a reasoned decision. And it's never too late to do that. So let's say you're 60 years old. Do you know what? Let's say you're married, and first I'll tell you this: do you know what the average retirement age in America is somewhere around in the 60s? But we know that few of us seem to know people like that. We all, more and more people work way beyond that. But let's say you're around 62, okay. And you're a married couple. And you don't smoke, Guess how long one of you is going to live till? If you're
90?
if you're just average, hey, good guess. Most people guess much lower. Into your.
I'm an optimist.
Just about 30 years. Like
Wow, okay.
about 92. You're going to live. Okay. One of you is going to live for 30 years. That's a lot of years to plan for still. Yes. So, the idea that it's too late, I've wasted all those years, or I'm too old now, what's the point? Someone in their 60s has a 30-year horizon in front of them if they're just average. And it's people are living longer now. We know that medical advances, right. We hear about those all the time. It's forget about the years that were not efficiently used planning. It's never too late to plan right. Another thing you said there, Terry, kind of reminded me of a sort of another kind of fallacy I hear from time to time. This idea of, I think you said it's too late to buy a house now or something like that, or market. It's too much, costs too much now. I hear that in another form from people. I don't want to invest now. Look how high the market is now. So whenever I hear that, either about the stock market or about the real estate market, buying a home, I always say, you think it's high now, you should see it in 10 or 15 years from now.
Right.
It'll be even much higher. And what it is now is much higher than it was 10 or 15 years ago. And that's just going to keep happening. It'll never feel like the right time. It'll always feel a little too high or a lot too high, but it's just going to get higher and higher. And so, when, don't let this sort of relative perception of, well, it seems high now. The house prices seem high now, or the stock market prices seem high now relative to 10 years ago. That should not be the guiding factor. The guiding factor should be a plan. Hey, what do I have? What are the resources I have now? How much money do I have? What does my income situation look like? Let's create a plan around that and see what you can afford. That's all.
That makes sense. And you making that observation or claiming the fact that if you think this is high now, wait till you see it, in 10 years from now. Yeah. You're not being flippant about it. Your background is math. You're a mathematician. Right. And so you've made a study and continue to study trends, right, of economics. That's one of the things that I know about you is you've got a sense of the big picture that most of us who don't have, that are not experts in the field of economics, not just money, but world economics and trends and, beyond just being able to make sure you can, plan a budget, so you can afford to pay your rent or your mortgage or college, for your kids or whatever it is. I'm talking, you really do see the big picture because you're factoring in the Depression and the Great Depression and every up and down of the stock market since it's been in existence. Isn't that correct? Yeah.
It's funny. When I was in school, as a student, when I was young, I hated history. It was just like a bunch of dates, and it was just a terrible subject to me. And I ended up going into a quantitative subject, physics, and studied a lot of math. And it's really ironic. So you mentioned earlier this episode, I wear two hats here at Abacus. I'm a financial advisor to a number of our clients, but I'm also the firm's chief investment officer. And
what is that?
Yeah, me and my investment committee that I chair, we set the investment strategy for the whole firm, for all the advisors use. So we have about 25 advisors here at Abacus, financial advisors. The experience that every client has, no matter which advisor they work with, will be very similar. The investment experience, they will be invested in a very similar way, really an identical way. Um, the same philosophy. All the advisors use the shared Abacus investment philosophy that me and the investment committee create, and so it's a common experience for every client and every advisor. And that, that's the Abacus way. But in that role as chief investment officer, I've had to become somewhat of a student of history, whether I like it or not. And I've ended up liking it a lot. I've really gotten into it. But yeah, to really kind of have an investment philosophy, it's required having a big picture view of the world, like you said, which requires becoming somewhat of a student of history. So yeah, just understanding all these different eras in our country's history, and also many other parts of the world. Everything from the Great Depression and financial crisis and the dot-com era and the oil embargoes of the 70s and and high inflation and of that period, and various banking crises in the 80s, and it's just, I can go on and on, but all these things are kind of all these parts of the world and economy are interconnected to the investments, and so yeah, I guess that's how I don't often stop to kind of ponder it, but I guess when I talk to clients and friends, it comes across, that I guess I have to have this view, this worldview.
Yeah, one of the things that struck me, we had a conversation prior to the last presidential election, and not just a private conversation, and I said, "What do you have any concerns either way, if whether it's Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton, one way or the other, how it's going to affect the economy and investments, and is it going to change the course of action for you philosophically, and and what you're going to do?" And I basically said, "Are you worried?" I said, "I don't even know what your political party is or belief, but if Donald Trump wins, which he did, are you concerned?" And you said no, because the trends are much wider than that. It's a longer course of history that you're looking at. Yeah, and that surprised me.
I'm really glad you remember that.
I do, and it relieved me.
Oh, that's terrific.
Too.
Yeah. It's
and
so
interestingly
true.
enough, the stock market has gone up, in this presidency.
Yeah, and it could go down too, and it won't make a difference because all that's it's temporary. Over time, it tends to go up more than it goes down. And sometimes it's imperceptible as it happens, but over a 10-year period, you look back on it and go, yeah, that pretty solidly went up. And almost every decade in the history of the stock market, country by country, that's the case. I think you know me well enough, Terry. If I were to ask you, you think I'm a pessimist or an optimist? What would you say?
I would put you more toward I would say you're an optimist or neutral. Yeah. You're an observer.
Yeah.
With an optimistic attitude.
It's so funny because I really don't like these simple categories, just putting people in simple buckets like that. But that's one I always feel like is an important one. It does seem to be a clean line for some reason. I'd love to hear some psychologists one day explain it well, but there seems to be a really clean line on that. People tend to be optimists, kind of more in the optimist camp or the pessimist camp. And I am more of an optimist.
I see you as a person who instills hope and sees possibilities and looks eagerly towards the future.
Right. And I think you used the word neutral, and I try to be objective about it. I mean, I'm what some people call an objectivist. I try to be objective and just understand the facts on the ground and the data and make decision in an unemotional way about it, a reasoned decision. But I think I have to. I've concluded that that optimism is not just an emotional kind of slant. It's a reasoned decision based on history. And
right.
The history of mankind is full of tragedies along the way, but overall, it's a kind of a miracle. Kind of how we got into where we are. And I'm reading this book right now called Enlightenment Now by Steven Pinker, and it's just amazing. He's a Harvard psychologist, and he just goes through the data. He kind of goes through every facet of human life, from war statistics to human violence to environmental issues to inequality to wealth, kind of every facet of our lives. And no matter how you slice and dice it, progress has been really in the last 250 years, kind of age of enlightenment period. We've just made so much progress as a species, and there's only tremendous evidence that it's going to continue, regardless of kind of what your views are on kind of a temporary presidency, and those things are blips in the big picture.
It doesn't mean they're not important.
It doesn't, right? They're
but
totally
they're still
important.
blips regarding economics.
You should, if you have, they're important. You should get out and vote. You should get out and exercise your voice, and but in terms of the big picture, the direction of kind of the economy in the long run, mankind, presidencies single presidencies do not alter the course have never altered the course of the country tremendously, and in particular have never altered the course of the stock market. We have, at Abacus, we have a number of different slides we sometimes bring up and show people that just show the kind of dislocation between, it's a graph over time of all the different presidencies with the president's names listed on them, and the stock market plotted on top of that. And there's just no relationship. And for the Democratic presidents, we have it in blue, for Republicans in red. So it's really clear. And there's no correlation. There's no connection at all. So
that's really fascinating to me, and I'd love to see that. And I'll go take a look at it next time I see you that we get together. But I want to ask you. I know that. I mean, the question that comes up for me as you're saying that right now is, you are an investment company that's very environmentally and socially conscious. You know, by choice. You have over 40%, I think, of your investment advisors are women.
Yes.
You're a very forward-thinking company. You've invested, brought into your investment group, micro banks, micro loans for underprivileged communities and organizations. You and certainly including environmental options, environmentally supportive options for some of the investments. And we do have a president right now, speaking to what you were just saying, that they don't really correlate, but we have a president that is shutting down environmental protection agencies. And, I don't need to go down the list of everything that he's doing. Does that not impact that part of your investment strategy?
It does not directly, because what we're doing is most of our investment strategy is based on the idea that the markets and people can make change. And what you're referring to is government policy. Right. We're not investing in the government. When our clients give us their money to manage, we're not sort of somehow trying to give it to Donald Trump to do something with. We're investing it in companies. The changes in the regulatory regime don't directly change. They could have impacts on companies, but it doesn't. There's a difference between we invest. I often put it this way: we invest in companies, not governments.
Right. That makes sense.
So
that's a clear answer.
Yeah.
Let's get in. We're in the second half of this interview right now, so I'm sure people are curious. How do you pick a financial advisor, and what are some kind of tips or things that you think are important for people to know about making good financial investment decisions? And don't be concerned about biasing that, that this might lead towards as an advertisement for people to come to you. If people like what they hear, we'll give the website and they're welcome to, find out more. But I'm just, in general, I know people must be very curious. How do our listeners make those decisions on choosing somebody, and what kind of questions should they be asking their financial advisors when they interview them?
Yeah. And I'll even try to use myself as a counterexample. Great. Our model here, there's no model that's perfect. So I'll try to show the flaws in our model too. Let's see. Let me try to keep it simple. Number one, if I can make it a checklist. Number one, okay, so let me give you let me step back. I mean, there's, I forgot the number. I think it's somewhere around 500,000 people, professionals consider themselves in one form or another a financial professional, financial advisor of some sort. So you have a huge number out there to choose from, and it can be overwhelming. And are there some simple?
That's about a 1-to-1 ratio on guitarist.
There you go. So is there some simple guidelines to kind of filter the group down? So number one, one really useful thing you can do is limit your choice to a certified financial planner. So a CFP.
CFP.
And look for CFPs. Now you just reduce the list down tremendously and increase your chances tremendously of finding, the right person. Now, that being said, can a great financial advisor not have bothered to take the CFP exam? Yeah, of course. There's always going to be some exceptions out there. But as a rule of thumb, a really useful thing you could do is focus on CFPs. It's a little bit like with your tax advisors. Most people's tax advisor is a CPA. As a CPA, they don't have
or you go to a certified mechanic, to
they don't
get your engine worked on.
Right. Your tax guy does not have to have a CPA, but people tend to want to see that license, that credential. So I would do the same for financial planners. Look for CFP. That's number one. Number two, ask them how they're compensated. This is a big one. How are they compensated? Why do you want to know that? Because what you're trying to figure out is if they have any conflicts of interest in the advice they're giving you. And you're trying to ask it in the most straightforward way and get to the answer in the most straightforward way. So there's a couple different ways to come at it, but one straightforward way is, hey, how are you compensated? You're looking for,
and if the response the reaction is defensive, then that might not be somebody that you want to work with.
Well, that's a really important point. Yeah, just the reaction alone is important. See how they react.
Regardless of what the information is. Yeah.
Yeah. The best answer to that question is if they is fee only. I would recommend looking for a fee-only advisor. What that means, let me tell you what the opposite of fee-only is. The opposite of fee-only is commission-based. And pure commission-based, you almost can't even say advisor. You can't say commission-based advisor. They're almost contradictory terms. But pure commission-based financial folks almost don't even exist anymore. It's become, we've gone from an industry where almost all of us were pure commission based a little before I started in the mid 90s, to almost no one is now. That's so your industry has gone through a lot of changes. So has ours over the same period of time, but different reasons. And so I think everyone understands commission-based. They only make money if they sell you a product. So if you're not going to buy their firm's products, their firm's investment products, their firm's IPOs, their firm's insurance, their firm's mortgages, then they won't make money, and you're just not going to be a client of theirs. They can't help you. That's pure commission-based. You're not going to get any quality advice. It's unlikely. It would be very difficult to get objective advice from somebody who only who's only trying to sell you their own products, not what's necessarily in your best interest, but what they get paid by. Right. That's the key. So how are you compensated? Are you fee only? Or is your advice objective? Is it in my best interest? Those are all different ways of saying the same thing. And so very few are commission-based now, but fee only is the opposite. You have absolutely you're not selling any products at all. The advice you give is the compensation you receive is completely independent of the advice you give. So our firm, all our advisors are fee only, for example. So no matter, we will get paid the same whether you're invested in investment choice A or investment choice B or investment choice C. We get paid the same. So we have no conflicts of interest. We're not trying to steer you toward A or B or C other than what's in your best interest.
And are some fee only based offices or advisors, are they hourly fee, or are they all based on a percentage of the portfolio? All
right. So now you're going into the master's level. So yeah, fee only.
I'm asking because I bet you people are wondering, I want to make.
No, and we should just, let's address that. Fee only.
Yeah, I'm not dumb it down, but just sort of give a broad stroke on the kind of things people should be asking.
So fee only comes in several forms. So it can be hourly. It could be retainer based, like $300 per month or something like that. Or it could be a percentage of the investments under management, like 1% of the investments managed. All those are examples of fee only, because in all three of those cases, the advisor is going to get paid the same no matter what he recommends. So he has no conflicts of interest. He or she has no conflicts of interest. Now, what most financial advisors call themselves these days is fee-based. And if you hear that term fee-based instead of fee only, I would dig deeper into why they're not saying fee only. What it usually means is they charge a percentage of the assets they manage, so they look and sound like fee only, but their firms, their companies still might sell products that the company could make money from, such as mortgages, insurance products, IPOs, mutual funds. So while they're saying they only get paid a percentage of what they manage of yours, there still might be some opportunities for their firm to make extra money. And so that I would dig into that. Does your firm sell mortgages? Might you recommend products that your firm gets compensated for, such as mortgages, insurance, mutual funds, IPOs, etc.?
I read on your website, I believe, that some of the most common areas that you cover, but are not limited to, are, for example, how much cash to keep in a rainy day fund, prioritizing and systemizing how you can save for the future, how to align your investments with your goals, how to track your spending or create a budget, organizing your financial life, types of insurance you need and don't need, renting versus buying a home and what's best for you, preparing for elderly parent who may need care or financial assistance, planning for dependents education, how to organize and pay off credit card and other debt.
Wow, we do a lot.
That's a lot of information. And I think really invaluable to people to people at all ends of their economic life, beginning, middle, end. They all apply, how much for a rainy day or for example, I'm curious, and I'm guessing a lot of other people are, renting versus buying. What are your thoughts of that? Not just limited to California or New York, which are high priced areas to both rent or, have a mortgage in. I know a lot of investment advisors that are very well off that don't own houses now. They rent. So
yeah.
What's your philosophy on that?
Yeah, there's definitely a tipping point at which prices are too high and rent makes more sense. And so, if someone I would never be comfortable hearing saying it always is better to buy, or that's just not the case. There's always a price at which rent makes more sense, and so it's going to come down to a case by case situation, Terry. So, and it's unfortunately comes down to neighborhood by neighborhood. There's neighborhoods in Los Angeles right now where rent makes more sense, and there's neighborhoods where owning makes more sense.
Okay.
So there's sort of we do it with our financial planning model. We'll literally put in the what will happen if you pay $1 million or 500,000 or $1 million, whatever the price is. You take it out of your portfolio and buy it now, but never have rent again. But you will have property tax and insurance. Mm-hmm. How does that financial future look versus keep the $1 million in your portfolio, earning a pretty good return, but pay rent for the rest of your life, growing at inflation? Right. Rent is going to grow with inflation. So we model the two out. We either do it with our kind of in a really rigorous way with our model, or we can do it in the kind of quick back of the envelope, kind of with a hand calculator way. And right. there's a number of levels of accuracy you can do it at. But it depends on what the price is and what the rent is. Sometimes buying makes more sense. Sometimes renting makes more sense. Oh, and then the tax situation. Renting comes with various tax benefits. So those have to be factored in as well. So you get all the info, you factor in, as long as you're doing a complete analysis, you can reach a decision.
Right.
The thing about owning is, the thing about buying a home, I don't think of it as an investment entirely, like a lot of people do.
Well, so that's changed, because it used to be, 20 years ago, you would buy a home as an investment, or certainly when we were growing up.
Yeah, it's. I do think of it largely as consumption. What's the expected return on one's home? Well, it's not like a stock. It's not like a company that is producing things of value that consumers want and need. And so economists can actually step back and compute what's the expected return on this company. Homes don't create anything of production, so there is no expected return other than there'll be inflation. So they might rise with inflation, just a general level inflation. But on the other hand, they're going to deteriorate. So you have to put money into them to kind of maintain them. So they're a funny animal in that respect. And
that makes sense.
Yeah. I don't consider them total consumption by any shape, by any means. I mean, I don't, most homes certainly have, tend to appreciate over time, but a lot of that is just because of inflation and demand for the area. Certain areas just have population growth, but it's not like for the same reason that the stock market has risen over the last 200 years.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for answering that. That's actually pretty clear. We have about 8 minutes left in the show, and I want to just kind of wrap up a couple of things, but I want to start with another quote of yours that I read on your website.
Okay.
Once again, because you have a PhD in physics, and you say, in physics, we're always trying to understand the simple and elegant nature of the universe. And I believe that in every financial plan and every person's financial life, there are simple and elegant solutions.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you saying that. That's a kind of very clear and understandable point of view.
Yeah.
Before I ask you my closing questions, I just want to have you speak very quickly to the people that are listening that are either in their 60s and older who are going, I think I blew it. I wish I would have met this guy or heard this interview 30 years ago. Or again, people who are just out of school and, just trying to figure out how to pay rent. How does this apply to them? And, I mean, my feeling is everybody can use a financial advisor at any point of their life. Would you agree with that? And it's really about finding the right one for you and not thinking it's too early or too late to have that conversation.
Yeah. I mean, we're emotional beings, and it's really hard to make decisions about money with emotions. And it's really hard to take the emotions out of the equations. And that's where an advisor comes in, bringing an objective view and helping, sometimes telling you the tough things you need to hear.
The hard to hear truth.
Hard to hear stuff. Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned the simple and elegant theme. That's been a kind of theme in my whole financial career. And it really kind of manifested itself when I started working more and more with entertainment professionals. This issue of having to build reserves. I mentioned earlier that the next job, you never know when it's coming.
Right.
The amount
or how much you're getting paid.
The income fluctuates. Yeah. So, how do you manage around that issue? And one of the keys is to build enough reserves, but how much reserves? So, one of my rules of thumb is having at least a year's worth of spending in reserves, in cash or bonds, is a good start. Then you modify it with factors like a producer might be getting residuals, and so that provides a little more reliability. So maybe you don't need a whole year, but the starting point is a year, and you kind of argue yourself away from that. So
Darius, let me just respond to that. And I understand it and agree with it, but what about all the people who just rolled their eyes and said, I don't even know how I'm going to make rent next month because I'm 18 years old or I'm 65 years old or anywhere in between. So this doesn't apply to me. And I don't want to lose those people. Great
point. So there's a principle called pay yourself first. And yes, you had to make rent, and that's of course is a really important. Things like that are really important. But we get paid, and then we go out and we pay all these other people. We pay the landlord, we pay the grocery man, we pay the car man. We pay all these other people, but we don't pay ourselves. What does that mean? Paying yourself first? It means saving. But literally taking the first 10% of whatever you earn. So if you get $1,000, you take $100 and you set it aside for yourself before you spend it on anything else. And the idea about the idea about the 10% idea, it's usually an amount, Terry, that people don't notice. It fits in with it.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. You don't notice it because people tend to spend a fair amount of discretionary things. And
right.
So,
at Starbucks or cigarettes or
so it just, it gets absorbed or kind of comes out of that. And so it's just sort of been, I wouldn't say scientifically, but it's just historically, it's just been found to be an amount that can be absorbed by people without too much pain. And if you could do more, some people are more inclined with more discipline inclined, do more. And
if you can't on certain months make 10%, then 5%.
Yeah.
You're
that.
Still philosophically, you're talking about the pay yourself first is the most important part of
pay yourself
that.
First. set it aside. I would, automate it as much as you can. So, just electronically transfer it. If it's coming from a guild, or if it's coming from an employer, you can set it up in some automated way. And by the way, automation is a really important theme for in general in good financial management. Just automate as much of your financial life as you can, so that it's out of sight, out of mind.
Right.
And you remove the emotional aspect.
That makes sense. I need to wrap everything up because we've got 2 minutes left. This hour once again flew by. You wrote, and I've got a closing question or two that I want to ask you with very short answers, but we're going to put a link to your site on the website here at entertalkradio.com. I also want to make sure people know that you wrote a paper called Wealth Management for Entertainment Professionals. That's got a lot of great information. So we'll let people know where they can find that on the website as well, or they can reach out to you to get more info on that.
Great.
We could spend an hour on these questions, but let's go for short answers because I apologize we ran out of time. Can you share 3 tips for success that have driven your career?
Okay. Let's see. I think number one, Terry, my yoga practice has been really important for my career. It keeps me balanced, keeps me sane. Number 2, I'm a big believer in preparation either for whether it's for client meetings or partner meetings with my partners, preparing to start my first wealth management firm. Preparation is everything. And number 3 is personal responsibility. There's been a lot of times when I feel like I want to play the blame game and blame other people for my challenges or my issues, and the problem is right there in the mirror. It's within my control to change.
Those are great tips. Thank you for sharing those. I've got one final question I ask all of my guests, and it can be a short answer or as long as you like. At this point of your life, Darius, with everything that you know to be true, what would you tell your younger self?
Life is really short, and make the most of it.
That's great. We are out of time. Darius, thank you so much for spending the hour with me. I really appreciate it. I want to encourage everybody to reach out to Darius Gagne as well directly if you've got any more questions about finances. Have a great week, everybody. Thank you.
Tune in again next week for another great episode of Making It with Terry Woman.
This is Jackie Bertoni from Jackie's Groove. Come join me weekly on my journey through the music business as I take you behind the velvet rope, interviewing industry notables such as Al Di Meola, Michael McDonald, and Al Jarreau, to name but a few. Listen to their stories on being in the studios recording #1 hits and onto the stages throughout the globe. Allow me to be your music historian. You can hear me live every Monday at 2 p.m. and every Wednesday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time or 24/7 on jackiesgroove.com. Ready to get your groove on?
Hi, this is Tim Dolbear from Eclectica Studios. I'm a full-time mixing and recording engineer. I work with Grammy winners, labels, and indie artists, using state-of-the-art digital mixing and restoration tools and the very best in analog gear. Really, though, it's my ability to bring tracks to life and fulfill your vision for your music. This has made me sought after by producers and artists worldwide. So spend your time working on music and not chasing a mix down a rabbit hole. Go to timdolbear.com and check out our free one-song mix offer.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.